Basketball has its sixth man, the unsung hero who comes off the bench to help his team to victory. Football has its 12th man, an unseen but powerful energy that urges the home team forward. Now, Christianity has its 13th apostle, a faithful witness to the love, mercy, and truth of Jesus Christ. How about you? Will you be the 13th apostle?
A hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered, and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man. That, ladies and gentlemen, is from The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. Do we have the heroes to save Western civilization? Here to help us explore that question and great concern is Dr. Peter Kreeft of Boston College, philosopher, convert to the Catholic faith. Welcome, Dr. Peter Kreeft.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And with us, of course, is my co-host, Dan Duddy. How you doing, Dan?
I'm good, Tom. And thank you once again, Dr. Kreeft.
All right.
You're welcome.
In the book by Dr. Kreeft, How to Destroy Western Civilization, the inference with what I opened with is heroism and do we have the heroes to save Western civilization? And that's the concern, obviously, by your title and by your book. So, Dr. Kreeft, do you think we have the heroes to save Western civilization?
I answer that in two words: John Paul II and Mother Teresa of Calcutta. They're not heroes who are.
Amen.
So obviously you chose, and rightly so, considering the station we're on, you chose two prominent Catholics. I mentioned, I was in a men's group the other day that I'm in every week. Something like that came up, and I said, as powerful an example of strong Catholicism as John Paul II, John Paul the Great, as many call him, the pews continue to empty during his pontificate and continue. That's got to be part of the reason you wrote the book, whether or not you stated it that way.
Yeah, and Mother Teresa's answer to the pews continuing to empty is very simple. She's often said, God did not put me in this world to be successful. He put me here to be faithful.
And that full of faith is faithful to the Gospels. I would imagine that she understood that she was some sort of role model. And you make a reference, I read this somewhere, I'm not sure whether it's in the book, but that when Mother Teresa talked to Western and American audiences, those who followed her typically were not Americans.
Yeah, her order, the Missionaries of Charity, has great difficulty drawing people from America and Europe. Latin America, yes. India, yes. Poor countries, yes. Rich countries, no.
And that points to something that history repeatedly shows us. The have-nots, and I'm talking about nations and the citizens of the have-not nations, tend to be faithful because they seem to realize that they're not sure if they can make it without having faith, and if this is a way to help them through it, help them to understand it. Once somebody who doesn't have has, then it's so well known that they discard the need for faith. Why do I need faith? I have, in this material world, I have what I need, so I don't need God.
And yet, look at the poorest continent in the world, Africa. People in Africa are poor. They're oppressed. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of corruption. Yet you always see Africans smiling. They smile more than any other people in the world. At the opposite extreme, the richest part of the world is probably Scandinavia. And, of course, they smile all the time, right? We speak of those smiling Scandinavians. The United Nations sponsors a an organization called the Happiness Project, and they find 5 nations in the world that they say are the happiest, and they give them some sort of a prize, and 5 unhappiest, and they give them some sort of a warning. When I first discovered this, I thought it was a joke, and then I read on that the latest poll of this organization came up with the conclusion that Africa, the 5 nations in sub-Saharan Africa are the unhappiest nations in the world, and the 5 nations in Scandinavia are the happiest nations in the world. I thought that was a joke, because even a baby knows that smiles are revealed by happiness, not by bank accounts, and by whether you love life or whether you commit suicide. The suicide rate in Scandinavia is sky high. In Africa, it's very, very low.
Yes. Well, I think that the statistics show that Christianity as a whole, and Catholicism specifically, they're growing in Africa and in Asia.
Their seminaries are overflowing. I'm old enough to remember when we sent missionaries to Africa. Now they're sending missionaries to pagan America.
I know. That certainly in the Middle Ages, the medieval period, I mean, that was a way you could get an education if you were accepted into a seminary. I think that so many of the priests in the parishes to which I belong over the years were Indian. A dear friend of mine is a young priest from India, and he said it's partly that way, but he said there's just this eagerness to serve.
You know, when Mother Teresa came to Harvard to deliver the commencement address, she began by reading the invitation. And she read, "We at Harvard invite you, Mother Teresa, the most famous person in one of the poorest countries in the world, to share your wisdom with us here in one of the most rich countries in the world." And she said, "I don't want to be impolite, but that's not true. India is not a poor country. India is a rich country. India has a great wealth of varied spiritual riches. And America is not a rich country. America is a poor country. America is a desperately poor country. Any country that murders 1/3 of their children before they can be born is a desperately poor country." Mm-hmm. When she said that, everybody was silent.
Yes. She didn't get an invitation back, did she?
Nope.
That's good. That was good, Tom.
Oh, gosh. Well, Danny, what's your...
I love the theme of heroes. To me, going from, I kind of dug into the previous chapter on C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and I'm seeing a little bit of a connection because some of the things that you had written about, I love C.S. Lewis, Dr. Kreeft. I just really enjoy him. I quote him all the time in my talks, and I need to dig into him even more so. But as a football coach, as I told you before we opened up the microphone today, for so many years and being around our youth, myself loving the church, I must say that we love our converts, and I know you've heard that all the time. And some of the generations above me would say, "Oh, they're the best kind." "Oh, converts are the best." And you're writing about C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, who were each converts, and yourself a convert. And I believe God has taken them, and they moved on. But they're about 40 years older than you. Did they affect your conversion to Catholicism at all, Dr. Kreeft?
Yes, Lewis certainly did. My college roommate kept his faith by reading C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. He had read Bertrand Russell's book, Why I Am Not a Christian, and he said, "Those 2 books helped me to be a Christian. If Russell's reasons for not being a Christian are the best ones, I'd better be one." But what kind of one? And then he read Mere Christianity, and he said, "Well, that's the kind I want to be, whatever that is." Lewis was very Catholic. He wasn't a Roman Catholic, but he had great Catholic sensibilities. He believed in purgatory. He went to confession. He believed in the real presence. And he was very ecumenical. There's a series of letters, an ideal ecumenical dialogue between him and a Catholic priest who since was canonized as a saint by John Paul II, Father Calabria. It's called the Latin Letters of C.S. Lewis. It's a model of genuine ecumenical dialogue.
Mm. Excellent. And what intrigued me, too, once again, as a football coach, and we joked about having my master's in dirt, are his 10 steps towards winning the cultural wars. You need to know, first of all, you need to know you're at a war. You're at war. You need to know who your enemy is. How big is this war? And then Custer was quoted as, "What Indians?" And then what is yeah, and that's C.S. Lewis, man. It was great. And then what is it about? What is the enemy strategy? you have to cope with injuries, identifying the main battlefield, like it was written, why leave Washington, D.C. and defend Alaska? What weapon will win the war? How you get and use that weapon? And you need to know that you will win. Or at least you need to know that you will never, 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 never give up. Now, once again, that is philosophy of the dirt. I love that. That makes you want to get down into the dirt, put your hand in the dirt, and go to war. And you made reference to, shortly after that, when all our books turn into Green Book, you mentioned Kermit the Frog and geckos, but you wrote, they make no trouble, but they are not men. They are Canadians.
Sheep. So polite that so apologetic that they apologize for being so apologetic.
Yeah, I just had to put that out there. Love it. And then you wrote, America's best hope is the fact that our borders are not being invaded by Canadians, but by Mexicans. Now, I'm seeing in there, you're putting out a great definition of manliness, of masculinity. I worked a retreat a week ago, and there were so many young men there. And I'm telling you, Dr. Kreeft, they were so inspiring because they were inspirable. Where's the future of our church? Is it more in the hands of our laymen today than our priests, our young men? What's going on with our masculinity, and where's our church today in this battle?
Well, I think the battlefield is fundamentally the family, because no civilization can exist without healthy families, and our families are in a disaster zone. And the statistics show that the single most infallible indicator of whether your kids are going to keep the faith is whether there's a father at home and whether he attends church.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Very much so.
I couldn't agree more. The same thing happened to me with my own dad. But on the other hand, I have read a little bit about your relationship with your father and how you had asked him some pretty provoking questions about Calvinism versus Catholicism, right? I had read an article about, you can tell us about St. Patrick's, what happened in St. Patrick's Cathedral.
Well, I was about 8 years old, maybe 10. We lived in New Jersey, and we went to New York a lot as tourists. And I'd never been in a cathedral before. And we visited St. Patrick's, and I was absolutely stunned. This was not just the most beautiful building I'd ever seen. It was a different kind of beauty. I felt like I was in heaven. And I turned to my father, who was a good man, a wise man, and he was an elder in the church and a good Christian, a Calvinist. I said, Dad, this is a Catholic church, isn't it? He said, yeah. I said, the Catholics are wrong, aren't they? And he said, oh, yeah, they're terribly wrong. And I said, then how come their churches are so beautiful? He said, oh, I don't know. But the question kept popping up in my mind, what's going on here?
Yeah. See, as a cradle Catholic, Kreeft, I would never have thought of that because we were kind of born into it, Yep. That's the beauty of listening to the heart of a convert. And the heart of the convert, I'm just getting personal with you, converts me to a deeper level. Your intrigue in the Catholic Church creates an immense intrigue in me into the heart of the convert.
In a sense, Catholics have to be converts too. That's why there's confirmation as well as baptism. Mm-hmm. You have to fight. You have to make the choice. You have to stand up and say, this is me. This is what I believe. I'm not inheriting it secondhand. I'm getting it firsthand. God doesn't have grandchildren. He has children. You got to get it from him.
Well, Dan, your comment makes me think of the knowledge that a new citizen to the U.S. Has, and the enthusiasm for, let's say, United States history. Surveys have shown that they do better on civics tests than...
You know why? Because they haven't gone to our public schools, where it's all undermined.
Exactly. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, good. That is a fundamental truth.
It's, you look at the way we perform in the international tests, and if history's on the test, we do poorly. In terms of the impact of the father, the one study that I'm I think this is pretty well known now, the demographic characteristics of the linguistic and religious groups in Switzerland. Anyway, what they showed is that regular church attendance by both parents will result in 33% of their children being regular churchgoers and 41% being irregular. And they figured the balance of about 26% will be lost. If dad infrequently attends church, but mom regularly does, only 3% of their children will be regular practitioners of the faith, while 59% will be regular. And in this scenario, 38% will be lost. And finally, if dad does not practice the faith, but mom regularly does, only 2% of their children will worship faithfully and 37% occasionally. And in this situation, the church loses more than 60%. So that's the hard data, at least from this one big survey, of the importance of father in the faith of the children. And that's not now, Dr. Kreeft, that sounds like a very patriarchal assertion.
Well, Jesus, in a sense, is patriarchal. He always called God Father, not Mother. St. Augustine had a very bad relationship with his father, and in his early writings, he's never able to call God Father. It took him a long time.
That's a great
true for many people today. I mean, when we do retreats and whatnot, we have men there who had abusive relationships with their father. The idea of God as Father is a difficult concept, and those are the type of retreats where we'd like it to be more than one day, because it can take, and obviously can take a lot longer than the time of the retreat, to have guys understand how can this father figure be a good father figure, and how can it help you to see that a father is a good father.
Yeah.
I mean, those men still are, although decreasingly it seems, still have leadership positions. But the difficulty that I have in the culture, and I believe this is true in our church as well, is the relinquishing of the man's role. Just at the very least, because he removes himself from the faith. He removes himself from the church with a capital C, and from his parish. They remove themselves. The three of us have probably seen this many times in our parishes and different churches, wherever we travel. So often we see young, middle-aged women with the children, but there's no man there in the pew.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's where I look at them, and I try not to think of the surveys and the statistics to say, 10 years, 5 years, depending on the age of the children, we're probably not going to see them much longer. And then where do they go, and what do they do? Because they have to fill. Well, here's a philosophical question, and I guess it's theological too, but philosophical. Dr. Kreeft, if we have a desire for something, and I know you touch upon this, and you seem to start out one way and then you seem to qualify it, and I don't say that in a bad way. If we have a yearning for something, if we have a desire for something, and our catechism tells us that in every person's heart there's a spark of looking for transcendence, by the universal desire for something more, does that mean there is something more?
It has to. We have many desires, and most of them are for artificial things, technology, human products, ephemeral stuff. But all times and places, all cultures and all individuals have hunger and thirst and sexual desire and curiosity and a love of beauty, and all these things exist. If we went to another planet and we found a race there that, let's say, was monosexual, there was only one sex, and they kept falling in love with a non-existent second sex, that would not make sense. Or if they were robots and they weren't carbon-based and they couldn't eat any food, but they kept hungering for steak, that would make no sense. Innate natural desires always correspond to something real. And everybody has at least a vague desire for something better. Nobody's completely satisfied with this world and this life. We want more truth, more goodness, more beauty, a better world. Only fools are satisfied with it. So either that means, of course, there is something better. There is a God, there is a heaven. Or else the devil's in charge and he's just baiting us with a lot of appetizers and there's no main course at all. And it's a big joke.
It sounds like the converse of if a tree falls in the forest but no one hears it, doesn't make a sound. In this case, we don't hear a sound, but we seem to have this collective belief that something is out there.
Well, that's in the human heart. The human heart was not designed at Harvard or Hollywood. It was designed in heaven. And you can't totally suppress it. The natural moral law is no longer popular among intellectuals, but it's just in our conscience. We no matter how much we try, I don't think we can rip up our moral motherboard. Thomas Aquinas says the natural law can only be suppressed. It can't be erased from the heart of man. That's why I have some hope.
Yeah.
Hope is different than optimism. It seems to me. Does that make?
Oh yeah, I'm not very optimistic. I'm temperamentally pessimistic, but by my faith, I'm optimistic, or rather hopeful.
Wait, I remember you said that years ago when the Red Sox hadn't won since 1918, I believe it was. But I knew you must have had to change your talk and your comment on optimism after they won.
What you said before about people who suddenly become rich losing their faith, that has happened to us Red Sox fans. We used to be the Jews of baseball. Universally persecuted, we're God's chosen people, and now we're assimilated, and we're rich and we're successful, and we've lost our identity. We don't know who we are anymore.
It's not fun anymore. That's crazy good.
Oh gosh!
In fact, we've got the best record in baseball right now.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, I know.
You're talking to Yankees fans right here, Dr. Kreeft. I want you to know that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll forgive you.
You know, as we kind of get close to wrapping up, I had referred to early on about Joseph Campbell and his hero journey monomyths, and it starts out in the everyday world, and then there's a call to adventure. That call may be a disturbing call, but it's a call to adventure, and we can refuse the call. We can tepidly step forward, but we need, in his words, a supernatural aid, and we would, of course, rephrase that. It is supernatural aid. We also need the aid of, and again, we talked about this, the aid of fathers, but I've learned that there are, through various periods of suffering, that there is supernatural aid, and the Holy Spirit works in great ways through other people. And Dan and I have encouraged each other as we've gone through our respective periods of suffering. In the monomyth here for the hero journey, it does talk about the road of trials and tests and challenges. But we don't want that. Our culture is saying we got to make things easy. We've got to give every child in school self-esteem, even if they haven't done anything to earn that esteem, and they also don't have a sense of their own self-worth as children of God.
That must have been the problem with Adolf Hitler. He just didn't have enough self-esteem.
Yes.
He should have gone to our schools.
It's very frustrating. Very frustrating.
But the road is still there, and the trials are still there, and the nature of human life on Earth is not changed. We have challenges. We can always respond to them. We can always become heroes. And it's in us, especially men who traditionally are the ones who do the overt fighting.
Well, the myths described in your chapter on Lewis and Tolkien, it makes me think of the classics scholar Mary Lefkowitz, I believe of Smith College. And you write about this in your book, Making Sense Out of Suffering. Well, we'll wrap it up by this part. In your book, Making Sense Out of Suffering, you talk about the myths and you refer to Paradise Lost. And you write, something deep in us says yes to the myths, even as our reason and common sense say no. And the Professor Mary Lefkowitz said that myth doesn't mean an untruth. There may be a fiction, but I'll paraphrase her, and I've thought of it this way, that myth can be a vehicle for truth. Let's conclude to what you think of myth.
Lewis wrote an essay called Myth Becomes Fact. He loved the myths, but he thought they were all fictions. And the factual world was just meaningless and hopeless. And then when he became a Christian, he realized that those two worlds were one, because Jesus Christ is, all the myths become literal historical fact. Without abandoning the myths, he fulfilled them. Just as he fulfilled the Jewish prophets and the Greek philosophers, so he fulfilled the artists and the myth makers.
Jesus Christ, the man, the legend, the ultimate hero. Dr. Peter Kreeft, author of How to Destroy Western Civilization. I think we've spent a bit more time on how to save it, and I thank you for your conversation today.
You're very welcome. I enjoyed it. God bless you and your work.
God bless you, Dr. Kreeft. Our thanks to Ignatius Press and to Kevin Wandra of Carmel Communications for helping us to arrange this wonderful conversation with Dr. Peter Kreeft. What's coming up next there, buddy?
Stay tuned, folks, for your prayer intentions. Well, first is the Angelus, of course, the beautiful Angelus, and then your prayer intentions with Peter and Jemmy.
Stay tuned for more great Catholic radio. This is WQPHradio.org, your servant station to Mary, Queen of Perpetual Help. And please help us to get God's message out to the world.
Amen.
God bless you, Danny.
God bless you, Tommy. Great conversation. God bless you all.
So, Connie, part of your homework last week was to read Tom Caffrey's book. What did you think?
I thought it was excellent, and I would like to join my wife, Kathleen, in recommending it, especially to fathers. It's an ideal book for a man and a boy. In fact, the title, A Boy for All Seasons, But a Man? Boys need a hero's journey to reach virtuous manhood.
And Connie, we have a surprise for everyone. Tom generously donated some books for people who give a donation, so we'd like to offer one for the first 2 people who donate. One on our website. You can hit the donate button and process a debit card, WQPHradio.org, or 2, the second book will go to someone, the first one who wants the book, to mailing a check to WQPH Radio, Post Office Box 589, Medford, Mass. And this would make a great Father's Day gift to someone. Maybe it could go to a godfather, right?
That's right.
Godfathers are fathers. All
And
right.
uncles count too.
Uncles count too. Yes. Okay, so let's hope we get a lot of requests for this book, and Tom will be very happy. Happy Father's Day to everybody.
Thank you for listening to The 13th Apostle with Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey. For more information on Dan, visit his website at www.danduddy.com or email dcduddy@gmail.com. Tom's website is faithpilgrims.com or email trcaffrey@faithpilgrims.com. How about you? Will you be the 13th Apostle?